I'm Axel Cushing, Editor-in-Chief at GameLuster, and this is a special edition of The Score, a weekly digest of news and commentary from GameLuster and around the industry for the week ending November 4th, 2023. First off, I'd like to apologize to our listeners who've been wondering where we've been the last couple of weeks. Frankly, we were kind of getting into a rut because, well, all it seems to be these days is just layoffs and layoffs and layoffs and more layoffs. It gets a little depressing trying to spice that up over and over and over again when it seems like there's so little good news that actually seems to be coming out. That being said, this is a special edition of The Score mainly because of yet another layoff and the ramifications thereof. Earlier this week, Bungie announced that they were laying off 8% of their workforce, a not insubstantial number. And while a large number of the affected positions were not directly involved in the development process, there were individuals who were involved that were certainly notable. Michael Salvatore, the composer for the music behind Destiny 2 for a number of years at this point, was probably the most high profile of the individuals affected. So in that respect, this particular episode of The Score is remaining true to form, and we seem to be back into the rut of layoffs. But there are other considerations surrounding this particular layoff which are unique and worth discussing. The original story, which was broken by Bloomberg reporter Jason Schreier, hinted at unconfirmed sources, or at least sources who are not wanting to be publicly acknowledged as speaking on the record, indicating that the next expansion for Destiny 2, titled The Final Shape, was going to be delayed to sometime in June. There have been further indications that that may be happening, although Bungie itself has not yet come out and said, yeah, this is getting delayed. Neither has the store page been updated for various storefronts. At last check, the PSN storefront was still showing a release date of February 27th. Now that may change, and if there is going to be a change, which I kind of think Bungie needs to be, letting people know about if they are going to do this, I'm guessing that it will probably be coming out after the end of the current season, or right before, or right after the start of Season 23, if that is going to be the case. So what is the big impact here? Why is it so shocking that this delay is happening? Why is it so earth-shattering that an expansion to a live service loot shooter is getting pushed back a few months, if it's getting pushed back a few months even? There are several reasons. First, this is coming on the heels of Bungie missing its income targets. It was projecting a certain amount of revenue, and apparently they missed that target by about 45%. Almost half. Now, 2 or 3%, okay, that's within a margin of error, I would say. 10 to 15%, okay, that's a little off base, but under the right circumstances, still understandable. Maybe not necessarily forgivable, but understandable. But 45%? Missing your target by almost half. That's a problem. How are you getting to that? Well, there's a couple of ways. There's obviously the game itself, clearly. There's the pre-orders for the next expansion. There's the Eververse store and the cosmetics for silver. God, the cosmetics. You've got the additional event tickets for things like Festival of the Lost, Solstice, Guardian Games, The Dawning, that sort of thing. And it's not necessarily any one of those things that has failed. It's all of them combined. So Bungie was set to make X number of dollars for the year, and they missed by almost half. And as a consequence, 8% of their workforce found themselves getting a pink slip. Some of those folks might very well deserve it, particularly if they, were supposed to be helping make those revenues meet the target. But your composer, your customer service people, those guys didn't deserve to get cut. Happened anyway. But this is a bad look for Bungie. And I mean, this is a bad look. Because people were already kind of unhappy about Lightfall. People were of the opinion that Lightfall was filler, that it wasn't really the expansion that we needed. It was the expansion that was kind of shoved out there because reasons. I would argue, however, that this is not unusual for Bungie. I would argue that Bungie, historically, does not necessarily do great work on their expansions, at least until they've screwed up pretty badly on at least one of them. Arguably, the best expansion that Bungie has ever done for Destiny, either 1 or 2, was the Taken King. It was wonderful. It gave only one new locale, but what a locale. It gave players so much from a narrative perspective, from a gameplay perspective, yes, even from that god-awful engagement perspective. Because there was a lot of stuff to engage with. The Taken King, peak Bungie. And it's taken them really until the Witch Queen to come even close to that peak. And even then, I'll put forth the opinion that they didn't quite reach that level. Close. I think it, at the very least, matched the Taken King from a visual and aesthetic perspective, but it also was a little short on the story. I feel that there are elements of the story which have showed up in seasons here in Lightfall that probably properly should have been part of Witch Queen, and possibly even elements that should have been delayed till the final shape, or rather that we shouldn't have even needed the final shape, and that Lightfall really should have been the end. It should have been the big finale. And Bungie dropped the ball, as Bungie is wont to do. But now, they've dropped the ball after Sony spent more than a few billion to buy them up. So right now, Sony might very well be kind of feeling a sense of, if not buyer's remorse, then probably a bit of uncertainty about the quality of their investment. They're starting to wonder if they've gotten, this great studio, or if they have inadvertently bought a pig in a poke. From a player perspective, this particular layoff is kind of the last straw. There is a lot of anger among the Destiny 2 fan base, and with good reason. You have continuing server issues, which are causing all manner of difficulties across a number of game modes. You basically had Joe Blackburn, who is ostensibly the director for Destiny 2 at this point, having to fall on his sword and promise, oh yeah, you'll be getting some new ritual armor, which isn't really ritual armor. And we're going to give you armor that is, that was supposed to be part of the Eververse store, but no, we'll give it to you. And I gotta say, that wasn't nearly as good a deal, I think, as it was made out to be. That particular armor, I don't think it looks particularly good. You have ongoing balancing issues with Crucible, the PvP multiplayer component. You have basically the ongoing neglect of the Gambit game mode, which is PvEVP, and you've got the story quality issues, which are persisting. There have been good moments, story-wise, I think, over the last year or two. Season of the Seraph is, without question, the best seasonal arc that I have played since Bungie introduced the season system back around Forsaken. You had decent moments in Season of Defiance and Season of the Deep, but at the same time you also had some really bad storytelling moments there at the same time. There are understandable questions about what Bungie thinks it's doing, and right now Bungie isn't saying anything. Shortly after the news leaked from Bloomberg, the usual This Week in Destiny post, which used to be This Week at Bungie, was not really This Week in Destiny. It was, sorry, not sorry. We know that we did these things and we know you're unhappy about them. They're done. You can't really do anything about them. But we hear you, and we'll talk more later, okay? This is the second absolutely tone-deaf communication out of Bungie this year. All right, we had the same thing happen before Blackburn went up on YouTube, or on Twitter rather, and basically gave his mea culpa there. But now we don't have Blackburn doing that. We have the Destiny 2 devs making a very short post, which really basically boils down to, sorry, not sorry, we'll talk later, maybe. The maybe is kind of implied, but it does not feel like there is decisive communication. It does not feel like there is somebody willing to stand on their hind legs and say, all right, guys, this is where we're at. We know this sucks. We know this is making people unhappy, and this is what we are trying to do to fix it. It is that lack of genuine leadership, which I think is really hurting Bungie more than anything right now. The fan base is up in arms. You're seeing a lot of people canceling their pre-orders. You're seeing a lot of people howling for blood. You know, they want some execs put up against the wall and shot. And really, I can't blame them, because let's face it, a 45% revenue projection shortfall, somebody needs to get it in the neck, and it should be somebody that has executive level banding in the organization. It would be great if it was somebody in the C-suite, but that's probably not going to happen. So what does this mean for Destiny 2 players right now? Well, let's see. With the firing of Michael Salvatore, we've probably gotten the last performances that we're going to get out of him when the final shape finally releases. Although, if it finally releases, is not an unreasonable question to be asking. I'm reasonably certain that Bungie is going to make every effort to release it, but at the same time, are they going to be doing to Salvatore what they did to Marty O'Donnell? Because if that's the case, that would just be ridiculous. And it would also kind of make it kind of one of those things of, yeah, if you're a composer in the games industry, don't work with Bungie. They'll hire you on, but they'll fire you at the drop of a hat. Are problems going to be corrected that are currently ongoing? Because let's face it, right now, the servers for Destiny 2 are in a shambles. I can understand the occasional emergency maintenance, but I am having a hard time thinking of a given 1 week period where there hasn't been emergency maintenance performed on Destiny 2 servers. There is very likely some very serious technical debt that has been built up, which has not been addressed, and which is going to continue to be an impact on not only game functionality, but player satisfaction. The fact that a whole bunch of basically back-end folks, not necessarily programmers or artists, the back-end guys that just kind of keep the gears turning and the works spun up to actually keep the business running, people are unhappy about that. And it's being seen as just kind of a continuation of typical Bungie callousness towards people that are not the executives. It feeds a potential, I won't say alternative narrative, but very likely a pseudo-narrative that Bungie is basically giving up on Destiny 2 altogether. That they are trying to keep it going just long enough until Marathon comes out. Incidentally, Marathon is also projected to be delayed by about a year or so. They're talking sometime in 2025. And if that's the case, then Destiny 2 is still going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And even after 2025, it's probably still going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting, because there's no guarantee that Marathon is going to catch on and bring in the money that Bungie believes is going to happen, or that Sony is believing is going to happen. We have seen a lot of outrage the last couple of months now regarding industry layoffs. I mean, Embracer Group is still laying people off, closing down studios almost on a daily basis. We're seeing massive layoffs in Epic, although Epic at least seems to be trying to do right by all their people, whereas there are reports that Bungie is doing everything they can to basically screw over anybody who had stock options that had not yet vested as a result of the Sony purchase. Somewhere along the line, Bungie lost not only the narrative thread of Destiny and Destiny 2, but I also feel that they lost the narrative thread of themselves as a company. Now, this may have happened when they changed their little mission statement wall from "we make games we want to play" to "we create worlds that inspire friendship." Because that first statement is a call to action. That first statement is an ethos. It is something to keep in mind at all times, at all levels. It doesn't matter who you are, all right? You can be the customer service rep. You can be the developer. You can be the artist. You can be the sound designer. You can be the guy that sweeps the floors after everybody goes home. But everybody is doing their part to make games we want to play. That is something good. That is something laudable. Destiny 2 General Manager Justin Truman, in a GDC talk last year, pointed out that as part of their transformation to a live service mindset, they changed that ethos. They changed that mission statement to "we create worlds that inspire friendship." And that's not a call to action. That's not an ethos. That's nothing. That is not inspiring. And I would argue that it is that mindset that has ultimately led to this particular moment. It is an aspiration, but it is not a call to action. And I think Bungie is going to learn the hard way the difference between the two, if they haven't already. I've been playing Destiny since the original launch of the first game. And I did take a few years out there because between right around the Season of the Drifter, when Forsaken came out and the whole season thing happened, it was like, okay, this is no longer fun for me. This is no longer enjoyable. This is a job, and I'm not even getting paid for it. And at this point, I'm over Destiny 2, I think, in a way that I wasn't the first time. Because now it's not even a job. It is a shameless cash grab every day. There are people that I enjoy playing with, but that enjoyment is flawed by the fact that it seems like Bungie is bound and determined to nickel and dime me for everything. If you look on the PlayStation Store page, they are offering the base game for the Final Shape for $50. They are offering the annual pass version, which has the base game and the 3 episodes, for about twice that. Think about that for a moment. A company is trying to sell you half a game, and they somehow think that players are going to pay for it, or that players will willingly buy it because, oh no, this is the end of the story. What does it matter? The story behind the story has rendered any kind of storytelling just tainted. It doesn't matter how good the storyline is for the Final Shape. It doesn't matter what new revelations may come about in the 3 episodes that we're being basically strong-armed to buy. It's mooted. It doesn't matter anymore. It's no longer a story that I'm interested in following. I don't think it's been a story that I've been interested in following for a long time. I kept hoping that there would be something that would make me fall in love again with this setting and with these characters. And for every good story beat or good character moment that we get a whole bunch of absolutely atrocious storytelling behind the scenes. And we can't keep doing this anymore. That really is kind of the sentiment that is percolating. We can't keep going on like this. Bungie has to change. They have to reprioritize what is truly important to their fans, to the audience that they are trying to get money from. Because they missed by 45%. And if they're missing that badly, it means that they have fatally miscalculated about what their fans are willing to put up with and what they are willing to pay for. We'll see if Bungie survives. It probably will, in one form or another. But in the end, I don't think it deserves to survive, and it will not be mourned terribly if it doesn't. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe. You can find other news articles along with guides, reviews, and features on our website, GameLuster.com. The opening music for the score was written and performed by Nirav Gandhi. I'm Axel Cushing, Editor-in-Chief at GameLuster, and this has been a special edition of The Score. Thank you for listening.